It's not that important. It doesn't need to be done now. And Sheila won't die if you don't watch her first Instagram story in a while. The urgency trap is honestly just a lie. It is an illusion. It is a false sense of urgency that often actually keeps us a lot further away from our goals and pushes us closer to fear. Not obviously to be creepy or whatever. It makes us think that everything that is time sensitive or has a deadline, a close deadline, means that it needs to be done now. This leads us to being reactive as opposed to proactive and literally firefighting through our tasks all throughout the day. That is wrong. Let's take John for example. The most important thing to John at the moment is career progression. All he wants to do right now is just increase his earning potential. And so John finds two distinct ways he can do this. Firstly, he knows if he wants to be senior, he needs to learn how to use SQL. And secondly, he finds that if he wants to work internationally, he needs to start learning some Spanish. John wakes up on a particular day and he knows that he needs to learn SQL, he needs to learn Spanish, and he has around 3 meetings for the day and a work deadline. He's also reminded that he needs to complete a feedback survey by the end of the day.
Damn!
He wakes up freestyling the day as he usually does, and he sits down and writes his to-do list. He literally puts SQL, learn Spanish, attend 3 meetings, and work on project deadline. John, just as most of us would, prioritizes his work deadline because it's time sensitive, his 3 meetings that he's got today, again, because they are all time sensitive, and also this feedback survey that he needs to do as well. By the end of the day, he has been working on his project deadline, he has attended all his 3 meetings, and he has spent an hour doing this feedback survey. He is slumped. It gets to the evening, and after he eats his dinner, there is nothing less he wants to do than to learn Spanish and understand SQL. So he doesn't.
Get somebody else to do it.
First of all, John, do you need to attend all 3 meetings? Just because you're invited, it doesn't mean that it's important. There are so many meetings I've attended before and they haven't actually been relevant to my work or important for my work. But because those meetings are time sensitive and sometimes on Outlook you have like a 15 minutes to go or something, it makes you feel like this is urgent. It makes it very easy for us to conflate importance and urgency when really and truly one is urgent, yes, because the meeting starts in 15 minutes, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily important or relevant to the work that you're doing. So maybe it's better to go and learn the SQL, even though that doesn't have a particular deadline. It is more important for you to reach that goal that you have. Did you think about that, John? When we really think about John's day, probably the only things that we could really say that were important was the work deadline and attending maybe 1 or 2 of those 3 meetings. But to focus solely on the work deadline, the 3 meetings, and a feedback survey that has nothing to do with him, that doesn't seem very wise. Just because learning Spanish and the SQL don't have immediate deadlines, it doesn't mean that they're not important, because learning the SQL and learning Spanish will actually help him get closer and closer to his main priority, which is to progress his career. If there is genuinely no deadline, then I need to set that deadline myself. So why do we do this? Why do we do this as humans? So one of the reasons is adrenaline rush. We get immediate gratification when we are firefighting our way through a list of tasks. Completing these urgent tasks helps us feel very accomplished. So we get a lot of immediate gratification when we're doing these things. They may not be important, but the fact that we are able to tick our way through a list, a very unstructured to-do list of urgent tasks, makes us feel very, very accomplished. Number 2, freestyling our way through the day and doing tasks that feel like they're urgent is a lot easier than sitting down and employing some critical thinking. It's easier than sitting down and thinking, okay, these are things that I think I need to do today. What is important and what's not important? What can be binned? What can be done now? What should be done later? And what can be delegated? It takes a lot more time for us to sit down and really truly think what is important, as opposed to just sitting down and ticking our way through a list of urgent tasks. Number 3, we live in a society where fast and urgent is good. Everything is demanding our attention at once. Everything feels urgent, from this person's new launch and that person's sale that's ending in the next 3 hours, to having our deliveries come by tomorrow and also needing to be rich by tomorrow. There are so many things at one time that are requesting or demanding our attention, and it's just like, stop. We live in a very fast-paced, productivity obsessed, and I can admit I'm definitely productivity obsessed, society that makes us feel like everything is important, everything is urgent, and everything needs to be done now. So it makes a lot of sense why urgent, fast things that come on our desk are the things that we do first, instead of actually thinking, hey, what is actually important and what will help me get closer to my actual goals. In essence, all of this is because of our misplaced priorities, and this is actually where the solution comes in. You're going to need a plan, knowledge of what's truly important to you, and routine. If we have a plan, we can have some structure and actually follow that. However, we all know that having a plan with no strategy, with no meaning, without considering our goals and the importance of things that we're doing, makes no sense whatsoever. So using something like the Eisenhower Matrix would be super beneficial. I just love the Eisenhower Matrix so much because it allows us to actually prioritize our tasks based on their long-term contribution to your goals, as opposed to some immediate deadline that is crying for your attention. It's funny because the Eisenhower Matrix actually forces you to sit down and employ this critical thinking and think, okay, what is important? What is urgent? What is urgent and important? What is urgent but not important? You put all of your tasks into these 4 quadrants and then bish bash bosh. You know what you need to do now, what you need to do later, what you need to delegate, and what you can absolutely bin. I have a whole video on the Eisenhower Matrix, so I'm not going to go into it in full detail because this video honestly is getting very long. But I would highly encourage you to watch this video up here that I've linked in the card about the Eisenhower Matrix, because this way you will not have to fall into the urgency trap. It is a lie. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope that you can commit with me to sit down and employ some thinking, some critical thinking when it comes to accomplishing our tasks, and always making sure that the big goal, our big goal, is always at the forefront of our minds. The Eisenhower Matrix does not let you forget this under any circumstances, so I would suggest that you do watch that video. I hope that this video and the Eisenhower Matrix video has and will bless you in the way that it needs to bless you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up so it can reach people that need to see it. Subscribe if you like my vibe, and comment if you've got something to say. Mwah. Meetings were important to him, but we find gratification. So one of the first reasons, it's not that important. It doesn't need to be done now. That is very important to John at the moment.